all revenues or other monies raised or received by Dominica, not being revenues or other monies that are payable by or under any law for the time being in force in Dominica, into some other fund established for a specific purpose, shall be paid into and from a consolidated fund. No monies shall be withdrawn from the consolidated fund except to meet expenditure that is charged upon the fund by this constitution or by any law enacted by Parliament, or where the issue of those monies has been authorized by an appropriation law or by a law made in pursuance of Section 79 of this Constitution. Where any monies are charged by this Constitution or any law enacted by Parliament upon the Consolidated Fund or any other public fund, they shall be paid out of that fund by the government to the person or authority to whom payment is due. No money shall be withdrawn from any public fund other than the Consolidated Fund unless the issue of those monies has been authorized by or under any law. Parliament may prescribe the manner in which withdrawals may be made from the Consolidated Fund or any other public fund. The minister for the time being responsible for finance shall cause to be prepared and laid before the House before or not later than 45 days after the commencement of each financial year estimates for the revenues and expenditure of Dominica for that financial year. When the estimates of expenditure other than expenditure charged upon the Consolidated Fund by this Constitution or by any law enacted by Parliament have been approved by the House, a bill known as an Appropriation Bill shall be introduced in the House, providing for the issue from the Consolidated Fund of the sums necessary to meet that expenditure and the appropriation of those sums on the separate votes from the several services required to the purposes specified therein. If in respect of any financial year it is found that the amount appropriated by the appropriation law to any purpose is insufficient, or that a need has arisen for expenditure for a purpose to which no amount has been appropriated by that law, or that any monies have been expended for any purposes in excess of the amount appropriated to that purpose by the appropriation law, or for a purpose to which no amount has been appropriated by that law. A supplementary estimate showing the sums required or spent shall be laid before the House. And when the supplementary estimate has been approved by the House, a supplementary appropriation bill shall be introduced in the House, providing for the issue of such sums from the Consolidated Fund and appropriating them to the purposes specified therein. There shall be such provisions as may be made by Parliament, under which, if the appropriation law in respect of any financial year has not come into operation by the beginning of that financial year, the minister for the time being responsible for finance may authorize the withdrawal of monies from the Consolidated Fund for the purpose of meeting expenditure necessary to carry on the services of the government until the expiration of 4 months from the beginning of that financial year or the coming into operation of the law, whichever is the earlier. there shall be such provisions as may be made by Parliament for the establishment of a Contingencies Fund, and for authorizing the Minister for the time being responsible for finance, if satisfied that there has arisen an urgent and unforeseen need for expenditure for which no other provision exists, to make advances from that fund to meet that need. Where any advance is made from the Contingencies Fund, a supplementary estimate shall as soon as possible be laid before the House, and when the supplementary estimate has been approved by the House, a supplementary appropriations bill shall be introduced as soon as possible in the House for the purpose of replacing the amount so advanced. There shall be paid to the holders of the offices to which this section applies such salaries and such allowances as may be prescribed by or under a law enacted by Parliament. The salaries and allowances prescribed in pursuance of this section, in respect of the holders of the offices to which this section applies, shall be a charge on the Consolidated Fund. The salary prescribed in pursuance of this section, in respect of the holder of any office to which this section applies, and his other terms of service, other than allowances that are not taken into account in computing, under any law in that behalf, any pension payable in respect of his service in that office, shall not be altered to his disadvantage after his appointment. When a person's salary or other terms of service depend upon his option, the salary or terms for which he opts shall, for the purposes of subsection 3 of this section, be deemed to be more advantageous to him than any others for which he might have opted. This section applies to the offices of the President, member of the Public Service Commission, member of the Police Service Commission, member of the Public Service Board of Appeal, the Director of Public Prosecutions, the Director of Audit, the Parliamentary Commissioner, the Deputy Parliamentary Commissioner, and the Chief Elections Officer. Nothing in this section shall be construed as prejudicing the provisions of Section 95 of this Constitution, which protects pensions rights in respect of service as a public officer. All debt charges for which Dominica is liable shall be a charge on the Consolidated Fund. For the purposes of this section, debt charges include interest, sinking fund charges, the repayment or amortization of debt and all expenditure in connection with the raising of loans on the security of the Consolidated Fund, and the service and redemption of the debt created thereby. There shall be a Director of Audit, whose office shall be a public office. The Director of Audit shall, at least in every year, audit and report on the public accounts of Dominica, the accounts of all officers and authorities of the government, the accounts of all courts of law in Dominica, including any account of the Court of Appeal or the High Court maintained in Dominica, the accounts of every commission established by this Constitution, and the accounts of the Parliamentary Commissioner and the Clerk of the House. the Director of Audit, and any officer authorized by him shall have access to all books, records, returns, reports, and other documents which in his opinion relate to any of the accounts referred to in subsection 2 of this section. The Director of Audit shall submit every report made by him in pursuance of subsection 2 of this section to the Minister for the time being responsible for finance, who shall, not later than 7 days after the House first meets after he has received the report, lay it before the House. If the Minister fails to lay a report before the House in accordance with the provisions of subsection 4 of this section, the Director of Audit shall transmit copies of that report to the Speaker, who shall, as soon as practicable, present them to the House. The Director of Audit shall exercise such other functions in relation to the accounts of the government or the accounts of other authorities or bodies established by law for public purposes as may be prescribed by or under any law enacted by Parliament. In the exercise of his functions under subsections 2, 3, 4, and 5 of this section, the Director of Audit shall not be subject to the direction or control of any other person or authority.